Hey guys, how we're doing? Now over the weekend I had a really fascinating discussion focused on the difference between digitisation and digital transformation. It was sparked off of a discussion that started around decentralized finance and how cryptocurrencies, blockchain, digital currencies are set to possibly completely disrupt the banking industry and where that is heading. Another subject that sort of got spun off from that was around innovation. I'd like to therefore today spend this morning time with you to talk around my perspectives of innovation, and particularly in the focus of the banking industry. Now, to me, there are two fundamental types of innovation. There's sustained innovation, which is focused on improving on the status quo. And then there is disruptive innovation, which is focused on fundamentally changing the status quo. So if we take a simple example, the transition from candlelight to the light bulb. Sustained innovation in the case of the candle was improving, for instance, the brightness of the candle and maybe the amount of time that a candle could be lit for before it got burnt out. The light bulb, on the other hand, was technology being implemented to fundamentally disrupt the process for lighting up a room, using electricity and technology to disrupt against the process and ongoing sustained innovation of the candle. And we've saw the same with the move from horse and cart to motor vehicles as another great example. Now, in the case of the banking industry, I think we are seeing an awful lot of banks and also FinTechs for that matter struggling to actually drive disruptive innovation. They're focused more on actually driving sustained innovation and hoping that what they're going to end up with is disruptive innovation. And I think this is because as human beings, we get taught from an early age to have biases. We have preconceived ideas and we get parameterized into ways of thinking. So if you're a banker, if you work in the banking industry, then you have a preconceived notion of what it means to be a bank and what it means to operate in the banking industry. Add to that the fact that traditionally the banks have been very banking product centric for a very, very long period of time. The banking industry really hasn't changed very much right from its inception very early on. The banks have had products and those products have been sold to the customers, consumers, to deal with their money. The world is being fundamentally changed from a digital native perspective to become more client centric. Now, for the banks to be able to therefore then deal with this transition, they need to break their model of a traditional inside-out thinking. Most banks have traditionally sat very siloed, looking from within side out and how can they help their customers from an internal perspective. Most digital disruption or disruptive innovation is driven outside in. It comes from adjacent industries and from people who don't have the same biases as the people sitting within inside the industry. So I think this really means that most banks, and this is what I advise to the banks when I'm talking to them about driving disruptive innovation, and also with the FinTechs and entrepreneurs that I'm working with, the first thing you need to do is to find people and organizations that are outside of your industry, outside of that predefined bias, to help you to identify new ways of operate and new ideas that are going to drive that disruption. This is why the big techs at the moment are being so successful in disrupting the banking industry. Right? They are sitting outside, which means that they're coming from that outside-in perspective. They don't have any predefined biases or frameworks that define to them what banking is and what banking should be, and therefore they can reimagine it completely differently and drive that disruption. Now, there are some companies that have been able to continue to drive sustained innovation and be very successful with it. Tesla is a great example of that in the motor vehicle industry. They've continued with the status quo and found a new way of driving vehicles forwards. You could say to a certain degree that is disruptive innovation as well, but for the case of this argument, I would say that it's sustained innovation. So what is the best way of moving forwards? There's multiple different approaches on this. Very quickly, what I would say is, whilst there are a lot of good methods out there to help you to try and be innovative and come up with new ideas, design thinking workshops, focusing on asking the why question multiple times, you're always going to end up with the same answers, irrespective of what the questions are, if you've still got the same biases. So what you need to do is you need to find people and organizations that help you to change that bias. I would actually be very interested in understanding what your experience is of driving disruptive innovation. What methods and approaches have you found? Let's discuss this further. I'd be really interested. If you're a bank or a fintech and you want to look at moving outside of your comfort zone, breaking down the biases to actually drive disruptive innovation, then I'd be fantastically happy to help you with that as well and have that discussion further. Thank you very much for listening to me. It's always a pleasure to share my thoughts and insights with you. And I also enjoy the comments and feedback I get. Some of you are very supportive. Some of you have got argumentative comments towards me, but that's fantastic because it helps us to drive forward. The first point of driving additional learning is to admit that sometimes you are wrong or you've got much more to learn. So let's continue this discussion. Hope you have a great week. Enjoy the day and talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.